On this episode of ResiWeek, we talk Control4's new essential lighting line, as well as what DIY does right. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is ResiWeek episode 214, Possible versus Probable.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by
Blackwire Designs, the go-to distributor for the CI industry with an extensive product lineup backed by unmatched sales and system support. Anytime dealers need it, even after hours or on the weekend.
Welcome to ResiWeek. This is your weekly roundup of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott for AVNation.tv. And this week, we are pleased to be joined by Margie Myers. She is a senior product manager at Control4. How are you, ma'am?
Doing well.
Thank you so much for joining us. Then we have Richard Riley. He's the CEO of Aonix out of the UK. How are you, sir?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for joining us. Then we have Todd Anthony Puma. He's the president of the Source Home Theater. How are you?
I'm doing well, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Good to be here, my friend. Thank you. And last and certainly not least is the one and only Uncle Richie. You know him as Richard Fregosa. He's the principal of Fregosa Design. How are you, sir?
Mellow West Coast greetings as I am socially distancing myself from all viruses by dialing in remotely.
Because we normally do this in person.
Always.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's kick this off with a story that comes to us from AVNation.tv. Control4 has expanded into a new wireless lighting line with their new essential lighting line. Read through the story. Essentially, what this is in the essential lighting line, that was a terrible pun. It's a couple of products that come at a much reduced price point that gives you a in-wall decor, a dimmer, switch, and auxiliary keypad that allow you to automate lamps, lights, and other plug-in devices with these new, or as well with these new plug-in dimmers and switches. Margie, I want to start with you on this. We've talked on the show a couple of times about how lighting is kind of set for a newer line of products that is much more cost effective. All the big players, Control4 included, have had lighting control for years, but it is not a small investment to get going. The Essentials line comes in at, I believe, $85 US per device, which is ridiculous and quite unheard of, essentially, in the lighting control space. What led C4 to go down this line? How are you actually, able to do it at that price point? And does this connect and work seamlessly with the rest of the C4 lighting products?
Yeah. So lighting has always been the key to the smart home, right? Like you do audio, you do video in a home. It's a great home, but we've always thought of smart home as being when lighting is introduced, when you start to have smart lighting. And it's been so cost prohibitive to smaller projects, the apartment buildings or the builder market. And so we've always known that we need to have a lower price point that lets, a professional go into someone's home and say, oh yeah, you want a universal remote? That's great. For an extra $85, you get this light switch. That can, control the light over your TV, do these things. Whereas before that was, for an extra $200 or $300. And that became a much harder conversation to have. So we've known that we needed to have a lighting solution that was lower cost, but that also fit into the look and feel of our other products. So we designed this to look very similar to our Gen 3 line, our current line of high-end product. And what it lets a customer do is say, even on a bigger project, right? Someone might say, okay, yeah, I want it in all the main spaces of my house, but my closet, I don't need it there, or at the base of the stairs or the basement, I don't need it there. And we can say, well, here's an $85, switch that can go in there. becomes a much better proposition for our customers.
Very good. Richard, as the Control4 dealer on the show today, let me start with you on this. When you start to look at this, obviously I'm trusting you are excited, but how does this new Essential line kind of change the way that you pitch projects, that you design systems? Is it as simple as Margie says, that it's a lower price, you can get into smaller projects, or is it a larger design decision?
I'd look at it probably another way. It's a lower price point that gets us into bigger projects, because as an example, we're working on a project in the centre of London at the moment where we're putting Control4 wireless, conventional wireless Control4 lighting into, I think it's something like 89 apartments, and that was something we managed to win over various other wireless competitors to Control4. If we had something that was probably at a lower price point, it would have been a lot easier at the time, and it would also mean a lot more projects would be open to us. One thing, I don't know what it's like in the States, but certainly in the UK, there's various pretenders to the throne, where you get loads of small companies that do wireless lighting, so on and so forth, that don't really do what they say they do. So to have someone like Control4 come in and do it with the name and the brand and the backing behind them at that price point, I would say just opens up a very, very big market.
Very good. Todd, let me come to you on this one. You are a Crestron dealer, but you play in the lighting space as well. You and I specifically have talked a couple of times now about how lighting is so expensive and it needs to come down. Do you see this as kind of a shot across the bow to all the other manufacturers out there, with the exception of course, all the, Amazon specials, but all the main players? Do you see this as a shot across the bow to say, hey, you've got to have a fully featured solution that comes in at a better price point?
Yes, I've been actually preaching that to my manufacturer for many years now. And I know a lot of other dealers have voiced that it's, customers want it, but customers also want other things to go integrated in their home. And in order to meet those price points, sometimes it's not going to happen based upon the traditional lighting control system that I'm currently offering. And I know customers said many times before that they would love to add it, but they couldn't, because think about this: the home automation just for the televisions, for the audio, that's their fix. That's what they want to get initially while they're meeting with us. Then with the icing on the cake is the lighting and the shading control. Now, there's more lights in a home than there is going to be speakers or TVs in a home. So if I could win over, the lighting by having a price point like this, that would be great. And I would, listen, I believe I would close probably all the projects versus some of the projects that we're walking into by having a price point like that.
Very good. Uncle Richie, let's wrap this one up with you. You've been in this game a long time. You've seen how lighting has really slowly trickled down from, Homeworks and the price point that it has been down to Radio Raw, and all the other manufacturers have kind of done the same. They've gone really high to more mid-market, but that entry level, not even starter home, but just your average homeowner usually can't really justify a $200, $300 a piece switch. Is this the trend that we've been waiting for in lighting, to start to see manufacturers bring fully featured products under $100?
I think it was, again, we've talked about this before. This is a matter of, we said it all over and over, is that software is eating the world. This is approaching a software solution. We're getting closer and closer. We're getting devices that chip costs are coming down, transmission costs. We're settling in on standards of communication that, let's face it, in any situation, say you're building a house, say you're remodeling, there's a budget. And you're going to allocate X. And there are creature comforts. You're going to want an upgraded countertop in your kitchen. You're going to want to deal with items in your master bath or your bedroom or furnishings. And all of the ancillary systems are luxury items. They are, you don't need them. The light switch has been around for 100 years. So, not much has changed from that point. So it has to be a really compelling feature for people to want to make that change. And convenience isn't enough necessarily. It's got to be convenience and value. And so I think what we're seeing now is that, yes, there are several companies who are saying we have to meet the value proposition. We are part of the construction industry. We're not a lighting industry. We're not an AV industry. We're not any of these things. We're always part of the construction industry. And I think that's where, honestly, people in our industry constantly get it wrong. You know, their artistry has to come out. You're part of the construction business, okay? You are as integral as the electrician, as the plumber, as all of these other people, and you need to learn how to work within a home and allocate your budgets and provide value accordingly. You know, I mean, even when I did my house, you know, I put light switches in that were, you know, I guess what, 4 or 5 times the cost of what we're seeing, you know, when we put them in. That was tough. You know, I mean, there were choices made. You know, I went, okay, well, I like it, and it worked, and because we have the lab and we use it. But again, presenting it to clients, you know, again, there is a different proposition when you've got 2, 3, or 4, like Todd was saying, you know, maybe audio zones in a room, as opposed to 75 lighting switches. People can do math. Most people can do math, and most people who can't at least can pick up a calculator and go, that's a lot of money. So when you can find a value proposition, it allows you to come in as a professional and look after your client's best interests. Again, I don't sell equipment. I don't sell hardware. I'm a consultant. My job is always to find the best possible value for my client, to be their advocate. So it just becomes another offering to say, you have X, and with X at a price point, here are the convenience features that you get. Now, if that's not going to work within the budget, let's look at Y. And then they can make an educated decision about if some of those features that you may get at a lower price point, they, you know, you're going to make concessions. And so, you know, cost isn't everything, but it's always going to be a consideration. So again, I view this as an opportunity for integrators to refine their craft and to find better ways to service their clients.
Very good. All right, gentlemen, or ladies and gentlemen, let's move on to our next story of the day. This comes to us from Residential Systems and Todd Anthony Puma, which is, it's rare that we have the writer on the show at the same time that we cover the article. So we're going to grill him in a second. What DIY does right? Read through the article. It's a great article, as always, Todd. Essentially, you ran into a client who had the new Amplify Alien Mesh system, which is Ubiquiti's new Wi-Fi 6 system. It was sexy. It was cool. It had all the metrics that clients love. And you came out with a question that we've all asked occasionally, which is, why are consumer grade products doing such a great job with their feature sets where we as an industry seem to be lagging behind? So Todd, I'm obviously going to start with you on this, as this was your story. You touched on the Wi-Fi mesh system and the state of that industry right now. You touched on Sonos and Hios and all the wireless speaker brands, and you touched on thermostats, which outside of lighting, which we already covered, those are usually something that people rely on and view as integral parts of their home, whereas the TV, maybe not so much. What made you write this article? What are the brands that are so dedicated to the CI channel seemingly missing when you're looking at these solutions?
Really, what it comes down to is, you know, it's been a frustration for a while now. Number one is customers go for the sexiest item that's available, and all the DIY products are extremely attractive. You know, Nest, Ecobee, Sonos's Port, and obviously this new Amplify wireless, you know, mesh network. It's just beautiful. It's got everything the customer wants. It's user friendly. You know, anyone could set it up, and it works great. It takes no time at all to install it, and it gives you pretty much everything that you want. Now, working with the CI network, which kind of affected me the most and upset me the most, is I'm kind of going to touch into, again, with the price points. We just spoke about it with Control4's new lighting process, whatever solution that you guys are offering. The price point is extremely, extremely important. And that matters to the customer. When we're offering a thermostat that looks like a big box on a wall that is from 1980s, and then it's costing $500 versus you have this new sexy Ecobee or a Nest thermostat that is gorgeous, that does a great job on learning and figuring out your daily systems, likes and dislikes and daily usage based on temperatures. To me, that's a disadvantage. Why are we not jumping on that? Why are we not offering, products that are a little bit more attractive to the customer's eye? Now, again, as a CI, we're going to turn around and make the excuses. Well, because we'll put a temperature sensor in and you won't see any thermostat at all. But what if in scenarios of New York City apartment that someone is renting wants to make that change and also wants to bring it with them? They can't do that. They're not going to put up this ugly thermostat on the wall. They're not going to sit there and invest into running all new wiring into someone else's place. They're going to invest in the Eros. They're going to invest in this new Ubiquity solution. And you know what? I'm going to allow them to make that investment, and I'm going to start offering these solutions to my customers because it works well. But the question is, why do we keep on falling so far behind the DIY market in aesthetics and in functionality and in solutions? It's a question that I want the manufacturers more to answer than I can answer at this point.
So before we get to our manufacturer on the show today, Richie, let me come to you next on this, and then we'll hear from Margie, hopefully. When you see this, Todd made the perfect point. We're, as a rule, as an industry, we're going to make the assumption of, well, yes, it's pretty, and yes, it's sexy, and yes, it has an app, but we need to, be able to direct wire our thermostat for this control. The API on this device isn't as great as we'd like it to be, so you have to get handcuffed by this ugly other device or what have you. Is Todd wrong, or is this something where, dare I say, 90+% of the projects that most CI firms are doing can get along just fine with a mesh network from Amplify in this case, or a Nest or an Ecobee thermostat, that they don't necessarily, you can still get the same effect, you can still get the same usage, and you can integrate those a lot of times with the major control manufacturers. Is Todd wrong on this, or is this just a part of the beast?
Todd's not wrong. I think what this comes down to is it comes down to as integrators being able to draw the line. Mitch Klein came up with a great term a couple of years ago. You were sitting with us when we were talking about it. There is the DIY movement, the do it yourself, but there's also the do it with me group. And that's where you have to make the determination. DIY is truly DIY. That's where somebody buys a box. If they have an issue, they call technical support. If something's broken, they pick it up and they ship it back to Amazon, or they request another one. The end user at that point, it becomes a buyer beware situation. And as an advisor, you have to sit there and say, okay, these are the risks that you're taking because you've made this choice. That's great. You're fully capable of making that decision. However, I can't support that decision because we don't necessarily know how these have tested out. Could it work? Yes. And I've always used the probable versus possible. Is it possible that it'll work in a large integrated system? Absolutely, a $99 mesh system. Is it probable? Now we're getting on the other side of things because you don't necessarily consider the larger ramifications. The purpose of a mesh system or these smaller DIY systems is not necessarily a 3,500 square foot house. It's a 900 to 1,200 square foot townhouse or condo. That's where they're focusing on. And some very specific constraints in terms of when the product engineers come across with this product to be able to develop it. And like anything else, it's the minute that you go off menu, that's when you run into issues. However, quick however, supporting DIY comes from being able to always have an alternative ready when the DIY solution fails. Ubiquity, which is the parent company of the Amplify product, makes phenomenal products. Amplify is their entry point. You can have a conversation with the client and say, you're willing to try it, we're willing to experiment with you. However, if this doesn't work out, we have plan B already in place for you. And if plan B occurs, we're then going to move into their Unify line. And then they've got, for distance, for AirMax. I mean, literally they're providing a product that's everything from a, 1,200 square foot condo to keeping buildings together from 5 kilometers away. They're an incredible company if you've never dealt with them. But as an integrator, you need to be able to know what, are they part of a parent company? How does this fit within a broader scheme? And so, I've always said, embrace it. It's an opening. It's an opportunity. It is the ability to be able to step in and save a client from themselves. But you have to be an expert. That's what it comes down to. DIY is going to be there. Things are going to be sexy. They're going to market to a product. You have to be well-versed in what all of these products do, but more importantly, what they don't. And being able to lay out for clients where the trade-offs are. And I think once you do that, again, your client looks at you as a trusted value. People are going to shop. Everybody knows how to use Google. So to think that, your client is mystically going to forget how to use something like that or type in, and read reviews online, it's nuts. It's a different way of business. And it comes back to, the value-added business and giving them the option for the do it with me service.
Very good. So Margie, as the sole representative of a manufacturer today, let me ask you this question. And I'm glad you're here because you're a good example of this in the sense that you were instrumental in the launch of the Neo remote, which had even before Control4 acquired it, it had fantastic end user reviews. They love the look. They love the form of it. It was sexy. It was such a great remote. So it's not that, the CI companies can't make sexy, but sometimes some of the, DIY companies seem to be ahead of the game. Is it simply something as simple as the economy of scale, that some of these companies have so much VC money that they can just continue to throw money at a problem till they generate something that's effective? Or is it just, this is what happens?
I think, I think your VC point is right. Like people can throw a lot of money at something, but to get, the nests, they're hyper-focused products. But I don't think that's an excuse for us in the market. I think in our channel that we're putting things on walls that look old and tired and from the 80s is not acceptable anymore. And that's the stance that Control4 has taken with, the start with Neo. There's things I can't talk about that we're working on that are
come on.
It's just 6 of us. We can talk about it, sure. No, that we understand that it's the look of the product matters so much. I mean, I spent a number of years at Apple as an engineer, and the first thing when you go into an Apple store is they craft the store to evoke an emotional response from you, so that do I need a MacBook Air? No, like I could pay a third or a quarter of the price on something that does exactly the same functionality, but that emotional response of that aluminum body and the curves and those things, those are calculated to cause me to pay more money. And so we understand that. And so, I think Control4 is going through a transition right now of saying, we have this deep functionality, we have this integration, and we've been riding a little too long on the beautiful functionality of our product to carry us through. But we know, I mean, the number of people I hear telling me that they're they like rip out Crestron to put in Control4 so they can have a Neo remote is not logical. Like that's just like, that tells us that look does something. Now the functionality of the Neo is even better, and so once they get it, they're gonna love it and all that. But it starts with look. So I think we have a long way to come, but I know that that's something that we're really committed to as a company. I think the other aspect of it is that DIY does a lot of things right, and we are learning from what DIY is doing right. But we also we're doing a lot of things to make it so that we're not just catching up with DIY, but that we're advancing beyond that, right? So we want to provide that full functionality to the customer. We're going to take it a few steps beyond. And then we're also thinking about our professional installers and saying, well, what do they need, right? What overseeing implementation do they need? What remote monitoring? What things can we do to make life easier for both our, our end customers and our professional customers?
Excellent. Very good. Richard, let's wrap this up with you. We've talked to the New York guy. We've talked to the guy from, the West Coast. We've talked to the manufacturer. Let's talk to the UK for a minute. You're dealing in London proper, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Arguably one of the most stylistic places in the world, where looks matter, what you drive, how you dress, all of that is important. Do you find it a challenge when a client, you're doing discovery and they've got some ideas of what they want in their home? You've got some ideas on what integrates well. How do you, in the UK, how do you guys balance that between what the client wants, what you need to do to, deliver a proper system that they're going to be happy with, all while trying to keep the entire thing looking sexy?
So as a company, we very much believe in less is more. So having things on the wall, we try and limit to touch panels in strategic locations around the house, wireless touch panels where they're not able to put on a wall, and using a mobile app, as well as using now the new Neo, which is a phenomenal product, by the way. And we find it works. We find obviously there are differences in the market in the UK to what you have in the US. The UK market, certainly when you're dealing with some of the projects you mentioned in London, on the suburbs of London, where people are building reasonable sized houses, they have multi-zones of heating and air conditioning. And at that point, these DIY products don't work. You need to have something that is either from the AC manufacturer or from the heating manufacturer, the BMS, that's actually going to work and integrate within Control 4. So we work on that, and that I feel is maybe will be stand out because other people do it as well. But it's one area that is really key to us, because if we can bring the integration in at the back end, then you don't need to see anything on the front end. You've got your temperature sensors. Each temperature sensor is going to go back to a manifold, which is going to control that particular area. The same thing with fan coil units or AC. Their temperature sensors for the cooling is sat in the ceiling, and that will allow us to control via a driver the heating and the cooling. You can do it from your phone, your touch panel, whatever it might be, even from screen. And that's how we do it. That's how we get around it. So we don't come across the DIY market that often. We tend to stick with as many Control 4 products as we can, not because we just like doing it, but because it makes commercial and it makes methodical sense insofar as if we're not going off campus when there's a problem, and I'm sure the guys will agree, most problems tend to be network within a home automation installation. We got one person to go back to, and we find when there are issues, as and when should there be issues, they're a lot easier to resolve. So that is how we deal with it. So we don't. People do come to us, but generally, when someone's coming to us and they want to spend X amount, it is not. They're not looking at the DIY market. They're looking at the CI or the specialist market, and that's how we deal with it.
Very good. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's leave it there. We are out of time. Thank you so much for joining us. Margie, if people want to connect with you, learn more about Control 4, where can they do that?
Feel free to send me an email. I'm just mmeyers, MEYERS @control4.com. Happy to chat, connect.
Excellent. Thank you for being here. Richard, my friend, if people want to connect with you, learn more about Aonix, where can they do that?
Same. My email is richard@aonix.co.uk or our website, aonix.co.uk.
Beautiful.
Thank you for having me on.
Uncle Richie, thank you for joining us. If people want to connect with you, learn more about Fergosa Design or the State of Control show on this network, where can they find you?
Nice lob. I like that one. That was awesome.
Setting you up.
That was a great setup. Well, obviously, you can find us at fregosadesign.com. You can type my name into the interwebs, and sure enough, it will pop up with various items, some business related, others not. But however, the best way to find us is please support us here on AVNation.tv. You can find us. You can find me here on AVWeek regularly, and also with my partner Steve Greenblatt on A State of Control. But that'd be the best place, and supporting us and the vendors, that would make me most happy.
Todd, thanks so much for joining us. If people want to connect with you, see everything that you are writing, as well as learn more about the Source Home Theater, where can they do that?
You could take a look at residentialsystemsmagazine.com and check out my blogs there, or you could actually reach me at my direct email at todd@thesourcehometheater.com.
Thank you again for joining us. For myself, if you'd like to connect with me, you can find me at Matt D. Scott on Twitter and pretty much every other social platform. But more importantly, please visit AVNation.tv, where you'll find this show as well as a wide variety of our other shows with all the verticals that we cover. When you visit the website, please take a moment to check out our supporters. We are extremely thankful for their support and ask that you check them out as well. Thanks again for watching. That's all the time we have for this episode of ResiWeek.